Hi! This time I wanted to talk about how to spot RPG mediocrity at your table. Rather, the reason behind RPG mediocrity. I was thinking about this because sometimes I compare my current experiences with sessions that I have played throughout the years, many years back, and I am so glad that I have managed to avoid playing with people that, yes, like I said, are somewhat or pretty much mediocre when it comes to their attempts at playing a role playing game. So I thought, if only I could identify like the core reasons as to what that mediocrity happens, because it's so easy to point it out as many things. So I attempted to get to the core of the reasons as to why that happens. Okay, and this is just based on my personal experience and my reasoning. Maybe you have very different experiences or opinions or thoughts, so if you think similar to my own thoughts or if you have a very different opinion, please let me know in the comment section or make a video response or whatever. And so getting to the subject of this video, you see many players, both player characters, or rather players and game masters or dungeon masters, that are playing these sessions, but they aren't truly playing a role-playing game. They are having fun with many other things at the table, but it has nothing to do with playing a particular role-playing game. They could be playing anything, any RPG that you can think of, but they are laughing and they are joking and they are talking, but it doesn't have anything to do with the rule system, with the session, with the adventure, with the storyline, with the campaign, with the world building. They are just like I said, just making jokes and fooling around. They have like that mind that they sometimes refer to in Zen philosophy, like the monkey mind. Their mind is not still. Their minds are constantly jumping about from one subject to the next. They are always out of context, out of character. So I started to think about those sorts of players. I started to think mostly about their interactions with other people outside of the game. And you start to notice, at least in my opinion, in my case, in my perception of things, I started to notice that they weren't very good at socializing with others in other environments, in other contexts. So I think there are a lot of players like that they only play, or that rather they only attempt to play role-playing games so that they have an excuse to interact with others. So maybe they feel, like I said, like outside or socially rejected in a way, and in order for them to interact with others, they use the excuse of wanting to play a role-playing game, but they aren't really interested in playing RPGs. They are just using the hobby as an excuse to be in contact with other people. And I think that's quite insulting to the hobby, to our beloved RPG hobby. Because you can socialize with others, you can establish bonds and friendships when you interact with other players, but you must also like role-playing games, in my opinion. You cannot use them as an excuse, because if you are just using tabletop RPGs as an excuse, then it's going to result in mediocrity. You're not going to be playing a game that you are not interested in playing. And I think this happens in many other hobbies and perhaps even sports, that you're not really into an activity or into a hobby, or like I said, a sport, and you're just in it so that you don't feel like I said, apart from others. But I think it's much better for those players to look for an activity that they can really dive or jump into with enthusiasm, while at the same time getting along with others that share their passion or their love for a particular hobby. So if there is someone out there that is just getting into RPGs to get along with people or meet other people or whatever, I would recommend that they are definitely sure that they enjoy playing role-playing games. Otherwise, They are going to be, like I said, they aren't really there for the RPG experience. They are just there to goof off and clown around, or whatever you want to call it. Now, another type of RPG mediocrity that I have spotted is that sometimes, well, I think you could say there are two situations. When a person has a big ego, that person could think that they have played role-playing games the right way the entire time. And I thought about this because in my recent review, you know how I make these video reviews divided by parts. And in this particular part of Fabula Ultima, that particular chapter left me so disappointed because it's all about teaching how to play role-playing games the wrong way, asking questions constantly, you know. Yeah, for those of you that haven't seen my video where I talk about that, I'm going to put the link in the description. It's the constant Mother May I game of, can my character do this? Is my character able to attempt that? Does my you know, and it's a constant back and forth, wasting time in a very inefficient way. You aren't really role playing. It's a constant back and forth of Mother May I, asking permission or asking for the consequences or the results when you attempt this or that, instead of living the experience of actually playing the role playing game and representing any sort of genre that you are attempting to represent, be it like a comic book or a movie or a simulationist sort of situation. So yes, it's a very inefficient way of playing, but those players, because they have been playing like that all of their lives, perhaps decades of their lives, it's an ego thing. If they accept that they have been playing wrong, it's a huge blow to their ego. So in those cases, I don't think you can reason with those players. It's much better not to play with them. And there's definitely no way to make them see the incorrect way how they are playing. It's kind of like, imagine that you are going to play basketball with someone and you tell that person, do you know how to play basketball? And that person is like, yeah, I know how to play basketball. And you start to play and that person takes the basketball and starts running around as if he or she were like a football player. Or maybe someone else tells you that he knows how to play baseball and he starts setting up bowling pins in each of the bases and starts throwing a bowling ball towards those pins. And if you tell that person, hey, you don't know how to play basketball, you don't know how to play baseball, they're going to be like, that's the way how I play basketball, or that's how I play baseball. But they aren't really playing those sports. And the same thing applies to role-playing games. I'm sorry, the hair is getting in my way. You know how sometimes I make these videos when I finish training martial arts and my hair is really messy. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Well, like I said, they aren't really playing a role-playing game. They are attempting to do so according to what they have been taught all of their lives, but they are too entrenched or fixated on how they play role-playing games, how they have been playing role-playing games their entire lives. I don't think it's possible to correct those people unless they actually do some soul searching. Okay, moving on. This hair is bothering me. There we go. Okay. The other case is when a player has a certain frustration when it comes to some things that they could have achieved or accomplished, or they could have done some things in their lives, or maybe they could have done things better, and they try to fix that situation through role-playing games. Let me give you an example. I used to know this guy. This was several years back. I think there should be there's probably a psychological condition, perhaps. I don't know if it's a sort of autism, but I have noticed that some people get a bit, they start to dress as if they were in the military, but they are not. For example, Tumblety, one of the suspects for that people think he was Jack the Ripper. It has not been proven, but he's one of the suspects. Sometimes they think, oh, maybe Tumblety was Jack the Ripper. And he always used to dress in military garb, but he was not in the military. And you're going to find people like that they have this sort of, you could call it fetish of dressing as if they are in the military. And this guy, let's call him C. So C, he was always dressed like in camo, like in camo clothes, like in the military, but he lived in the city, so it was very ridiculous to see him like that, because you usually want to wear camouflage when you want to hide from your enemies. Maybe it's like a fashion statement. No, you're free to dress however you like, but I got the sense like he was dressing up like that to feel like he was in the military. It's kind of like he was constantly in LARP mode. But if he wanted to express himself like that, I think browns and grays. Browns and grays are better camouflage colors for the city because of the colors of the buildings, the houses. It's mostly like dull gray or dull brown, or a combination, much better. So it always felt a bit nonsensical when he was dressed like that. He looked a bit weird. So he was constantly dressed like that, and when we played any RPG that wasn't too crunchy, it was more like freeform, typical like Fate, he would get really frustrated, and he would be a terrible player, very mediocre when it comes to role-playing or coming up with some ideas during the game, because he needed that crunchy structure, those numbers. He would constantly complain that the game wasn't like a very accurate simulation. He was all about the simulation, but I feel like because of the games that he enjoyed playing, for example, he really liked Hackmaster, and he was a good Hackmaster player. You know how Hackmaster gets extremely crunchy with all of those nuances and details concerning the shock from the pain that you take from the wounds, how the, like I've said a few times, the floor can get a bit slippery because of the blood, the type of weapon, and the if you're using a shield, you get a -4 to your D20 roll to protect yourself or defend yourself. It also has a lot to do with attacking from which angle. It's possible for you to die immediately from a terrible blow. There are many things about Hackmaster. Your armor degrades. You have so many results when it comes to critical hits. So he loved all of that, and he was an awesome Hackmaster player. But outside of that, he was, like I said, very mediocre in any other sort of RPG that didn't have like a crunchy structure. And I always felt that it was because he was a bit frustrated that he couldn't live like those battle situations. It felt like he wanted to be in the military or some sort of thing like that. Eventually he moved out of the city, so I don't know what happened to him. We lost contact, but I always got the feeling he is being very mediocre about those other RPGs because he cannot get his mind out of simulating or living those situations in an RPG environment. And he should be allowed, of course, to enjoy those experiences, but I don't think he should be participating in other sorts of less crunchy systems or systems. Imagine that guy playing Golden Sky Stories, which has no combat whatsoever. It would have been frustrating, perhaps nightmarish for him. So it's important to identify that, so those players stick to those RPG experiences. However, in the case of C, and in other cases, I have noticed that sometimes those players that have those fixations, they constantly attack and berate other RPGs, that they are not good RPGs, or that they aren't really role-playing games because they don't have that crunchy structure. And I think that could be a bit of misinformation or spreading, like incorrect information about different role-playing games. It's just like that they aren't they aren't capable of, or they don't want to be capable of playing those experiences because of their fixation or obsession with that other play style. And you have those other cases that are on the extreme. They could be more free form, and they hate math, they hate crunchy rules. When they try to play crunchier systems or more complex rule sets, it's like they are trying to win a race using a wheelchair, while someone who truly enjoys those crunchy systems, they use those rule sets as if they were sport cars. And I think in general, crunchy systems are very good for the mind. They strengthen that mental muscle. If you are constantly engaging those calculations, your brain becomes more capable of processing so much information at the same time. And if you're constantly playing those rules light systems, and take it from someone who also enjoys rules light systems, I just mentioned the other day that I consider the Quick and Classic role-playing game the best rules light fantasy RPG system, one of my favorite RPGs in fact. But then again, my other fantasy role-playing game, my favorite fantasy role-playing game is Hackmaster. So you have those two extremes. And I think it's a good idea to play crunchy systems every now and then to strengthen the mind. And if you want to relax the mind, or perhaps you could say strengthen a more freeform creative side of your brain, then you could engage in rules light systems. So it's important to take that into consideration. If there are people that are constantly attacking crunchy systems or attacking freeform systems, it's more likely that those people are not very good when it comes to playing those systems. So it's much better for them to attack those systems, because otherwise the flaw lies on them or within them. I think that also applies to the case of mediocrity that I talked about earlier in this video, about people in the case of the ego, that they have this ego that they have learned to play role-playing games in a certain incorrect way, and it's not in their convenience to accept that they have been playing wrong, because it makes them look mediocre. So there's a lot of ego involved, definitely. So I hope that this information would serve to identify those situations, those cases. Maybe you have a player that player, it's much better if he or she doesn't play crunchy systems. He should be playing freeform or rules light systems, or the other way around, he should be playing crunchy systems. And identify those cases that you simply cannot do something for the person. Like I said, in the case of the ego, that you simply cannot convince the player otherwise, because he would be accepting that he has mistakes, that he or she is wrong. And those people are drowning in their own arrogance. It's impossible to pull them out of that unless they themselves do something about it on their own. And in the first case, definitely avoid those players that are just playing role-playing games to have for the excuse of interacting with others. I think that's where many of the negative stereotypes of RPGs come from. Like the typical, that person is not doesn't have a good hygiene, and he doesn't treat others well, and he's playing role-playing games. But that's the thing, that person doesn't actually enjoy role-playing games. He's just getting into the hobby, or trying to get into the hobby, to have an excuse to interact with others, because otherwise no one would want to be around that person. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, your own thoughts on the matter, please share them in the comments or make a video response. I would love to hear your thoughts on these situations. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you, and see you later.